Today is a very unusual both day and opportunity. We're here in the Red Deer Museum, the Capitol Room, theater that Rondo and I used to enjoy watching our movies as youngsters. But today's it's quite a privilege to actually introduce our neighbors up on the top of Michener Hill. We moved up there shortly after the war, and not long afterwards, we had new neighbors by the name of Marjorie and Kerry Wood. And so Rondo and I and her sister Heather and brother Greg lived there and grew up together for about 10 years. So today's an unusual pleasure for me to introduce you to Rondo and to let Rondo talk a bit about her parents. The actual first presentation of her comments were 2 years ago at the Central Alberta Historical Society's September presentation. So very kindly, Rondo has agreed to go through that presentation again and highlight some features that I thought were exceptional about her parents and particularly her memory of them. So Rondo, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Pleasure. I have notes. My dad was named Edgar Allardyce Wood. He was born June the 2nd, 1907, in New York City. On the way. His parents were moving from Scotland to Canada. His dad was William, called Willie. His mom was Elizabeth. And he had two older brothers, Thaddeus, age 9, and Charlie, age 6. The Woods came by train from the eastern area of Canada into St. Thomas, Ontario, and that was near to where one of the other Wood uncles was staying. But they wanted to see Canada. So the Woods came by train to St. Thomas, Ontario, and enjoyed the East, which was pretty populated and busy. Then in 1911, they moved to Esterhazy, Saskatchewan, on Canada's prairies, right near, did I say Saskatchewan? Yeah, it's Saskatchewan, right near the Alberta border. Willie was interested in gardening, not in farming. So in 19, the little family moved to Calgary, where another member of the clan of Wood were already. Edgar, at age 5, was interested in nature, and when they were settled in to Calgary, he asked about finding out what kind of a bird he'd seen, and the family, his dad, said, "Go to that building, it's the library." So a lady librarian answered his question, Nobby's, and she showed him a reference dictionary. That night, Edgar told his parents he wanted to become a writer and learn about wildlife. And boy, did he. He bothered all kinds of adults who were interested in animals.
That became his life mission.
Indeed, and he grew to appreciate what a wonderful variety of birds, animals, and other nature things he could find right near Red Deer. Anyway, he also decided and told his parents he wanted to become a writer and learn about wildlife. In early 1918, like so many people, the whole family was sick with the Spanish influenza, and the eldest son, Thaddeus, nursed all the members of the family, the parents and 3 siblings. And Thaddy, was the only one who died after that.
Oh, tragic. How old would Mr. Wood be in 1918?
1907. He would subtract 1907 from 1918.
Was he born in
1907? He was born.
1907?
Yeah.
Okay, so he would only been about 11.
That's right. He was, yeah. And the other boys, none of them was over 20. They were all the whole little family was still all together. So after Daddy's death, the rest of them didn't want to stay where they had been, so they moved into Red Deer. Young Edgar documented the birds and animals living nearby. He couldn't resist. There were so many of everything. He joined the Alberta Natural History Society at age 12, and then he became a Dominion Migratory Bird Officer. And that was a federal award because he sent in details about birds and things that he saw that were real in all seasons. So the details every month really impressed people in the East. Edgar got the nickname Nobby after a chum said that his face was just like the face of Charlie's dog. Big eyebrows. Berkshire Nobby was the name of the dog, and his friend said, "You should be Nobby also." So that friend and his other friends, taking this tease about eyebrows, thought Nobby was kind of cute. Anything was going to be better than Edgar in his opinion, and it stuck. In 1919, he was awarded Alberta's Federal Naturalist Specialist. He sometimes read his nature stories to the boys in the scout troop, and he was corresponding all over the world very, very happily.
I can't resist mentioning that my father started the scout troop again after the war, picking up from your father.
Wasn't that nice? Yeah. The very famous, oh dear, I've gone blank, the founder of the...
Lord Baden-Powell.
Baden-Powell and Lady Baden-Powell came through several times. And the funny story is that this young lad, Wood, he was allowed to carry a flag, I believe, when they came off the train, the Baden-Powells. And then the same afternoon later, they were at a special event. And here came this young lad again. He didn't have a flag, though.
There's another story about that relationship. Apparently, Baden-Powell's favorite walking stick was a diamond willow. And one of the reasons he loved coming through Red Deer between Calgary and Edmonton was so he could meet Kerry, and Kerry would give him a diamond willow stave. And his favorite stave, wherever he went, was that diamond willow stayed?
Diamond willow is it's a large shrub, and it grows diamond shapes in the main trunk, and it makes wonderful gifts if you chop it and you dress it up with nice shellac or something. So my dad would make candlesticks, diamond willow stuck in.
He used to make lamps?
Yeah. Anyway, stuck in the diamond willow. Pardon me for that little flub. Now, where was I?
You were talking about him coming to Red Deer, or passing through Red Deer.
Yes. And well, after all these ins and outs, he began to realize that Red Deer was home, that he really wanted to be in this little area of Alberta because of the wonderful nature, because of the nice people, and that he had the liberty to follow his dream. He, however, was sending his articles all over the world, really. And at first, he was dreaming, and I've never seen him. He was sending material written by George Jones or something like that. False names, pseudonyms it's called. And finally, at an editors' meeting, they said, "What's all this in Red Deer?" And the fellows at that meeting decided it was one man. And so they wrote to him and they said, "Choose one pseudonym, please." So that's how he became Kerry. Knob Kerry was the Lord Baden-Powell's name for his walking stick, a knob Kerry. So Kerry became my dad's working title. Oh, he was knobby to his friends all his life.
Anyway, his formal writing name was Kerry.
That's right.
And then all his books are written by Kerry Wood.
That's right. And all his radio comment.
Interviews?
He had radio shows, starting with the dear old CBC, but he had a good voice, and he was being invited by the Lions Club or Kinsman or whoever,
right.
And he became fairly well known as a speaker. And he enjoyed them, the audiences, and the teaching of it. That was sort of like being an unofficial teacher.
Yes, I've read of many of the presentations he gave to the Rotary Club.
Yes,
anytime they had a speaker who didn't turn up, they phoned him.
That's right, and usually it was the speaker for lunch. And so it was, it's so and so half past the start. We'd better phone Nobby. So they'd phone my dad and say, "Have you got a recent thing you can bring down quickly?" And that's how his fame started.
Locally.
Very much. He was really published in Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, wherever, and then much larger. Edmonton Bulletin, he had regular columns, and the Calgary newspapers. There was something in the Red Deer Advocate called the third column on the editorial page. You have the cartoon, and then you have this area. It was to be an opportunity for good writers, good in the opinion of the editors of the Advocate. And so he got publication, he got radio He loved radio, and he spoke very clearly, not fancy. He really, really was a self-educated fellow. But anyway, soon British and European papers were publishing his material on outdoor Canada. In the meanwhile, Nobby admired a young woman named Marjorie Marshall. She played on the women's basketball and Red Deer women's hockey teams. She came from Joffre area, east of Red Deer, and incidentally, she was their goalie. She came into Red Deer for high school, and the principal interviewed her wanting to know about her, and she said, when he asked, do you have a sport? And she kind of fussed. He said, well, tell me. Hockey? Oh! And you could just hear the gears. She's little. Is she a defense? What position do you play, Miss Wood? Not Miss Wood, Miss Marshall. I'm the goalie. Goalie? We need a goalie. And she told that little tiny story all through her life.
She was also, I think, a substitute or available to the Edmonton grads. I'm not sure she played with them, but
yeah, the Edmonton grads got lots of women to play from all over, even though they were called Edmonton. So there were 3 or 4 girls from the Red Deer area, including my mother, because when that principal asked her about having a sport, and she said she would a goalie, he was just overjoyed because he solved that team thing.
She could play for the Amazons.
That's right, and she did. Anyway, in 1934, Nobby bought a little house on the east hill of Red Deer. He and Marjorie got married in 1936. They were each other's best friends lifelong. They were different, but they were they blended, and they had good fun. She learned a lot about nature. He learned a lot about the local countryside in terms of who was farming here and there, and they became a wonderful team.
She was also a nursing aide, I believe, at the hospital.
That's right. Yeah. There was a time in the early dirty 30s, they call them, when they needed able bodies. And yeah, she had her mother, Amy Orvis Marshall, had become very helpful in the early 30s when women with any training in medicine were hauled out to work. Where, medicine was not only for men, it was also for women. And they made the Edmonton grads were teams in hockey and in basketball, I believe. Anyway, aside, my mother had passed the era of those games by the time we kids were along. Yeah. She was running after us anyway. And
part of being your mother.
Right on. Okay. fan mail came in from all over the world. One lady, did I say already about the lady from Germany?
No.
Okay. One lady pen pal of my dad's in Germany wrote to get permission for her to translate Nobby's stories into German. So that was quite exciting for him. Of course, she wrote back to him, and I think this was in the 50s, and she was promised, she had to promise my dad he would get a copy in English of the article.
Great.
Nobby adopted the pen name Kerry. After his parents went to Vancouver, Nobby quit high school in grade 10. His principal agreed because he knew this young man was reading like a fiend and probably ahead of the rest of them in science and things to do with nature. So he was just 16 at this time, and the teacher did agree with his wish to quit high school. His parents had given him money when they went off to Vancouver, and the money was to feed him while gone. First thing he did was go out and buy a typewriter with the money. So
he knew where he was going.
He knew where he was going. He had columns. Now, columns were third columns in the newspapers. On the editorial page, there'd be a cartoon, and then there'd be a opinion column, and then there'd be letters to the editor. Well, the opinion people got regular showing him. My dad had Mondays sometimes. Monday became very valuable, and some other guy booted him off Monday. But my dad ended up with columns in the Edmonton Bulletin as well, and the two Calgary newspapers. And then the British and the European papers thought it was interesting to get Outdoor Canada. And so he was a busy guy, and it was all by mail. Or, well, it certainly wasn't by phone. And he was toying with marrying my mother at the time, 1936. Fan mail came from all over the world. One lady principal was a pen pal for years, and she translated my dad's articles from English into German with my dad's approval. She said, "We have those animals too." Tourists often made diversions to Red Deer after visiting Edmonton or Calgary. The attraction was Mickey the Beaver. Mickey the Beaver was known around the world in, I would say, in the 50s, because my dad created a very interesting family of beavers, and the articles that appeared in the papers about Mickey the Beaver and what he saw and where he lived, all those things were really eye-opener inducements for people young and old.
And Mickey was originally, I think, an injured beaver, and Doris Forbes took him in.
That's correct.
And Kerry Wood.
Red Deer girl.
Yep. And your father made the story famous when he wrote it up in the of all well-named magazines, the Beaver magazine that was put out by the Hudson Bay Company, and that's what started the story of Mickey the Beaver. I think as early as 1942.
That's good. That's very good.
And now there's a statue of Mickey where the Forbes house originally was.
Yes.
Next to Waskasoo Creek.
Yes. And people who were driving would make a diversion from their trip from, let's say they flew into Calgary and got a rent-a-car, and they would go deliberately to Red Deer to find Mickey the Beaver, and then they would go on to Edmonton or back to Calgary, and then they would write to my dad. So he wrote, he was a self-taught man. The guy left school at age 16, but he was very adept at teasing out information from people and paper and radio and television. Then, he got his own TV show, and he was very calm, and he had a voice similar to yours, tenor, baritone, I don't know what, but where you have possibility to influence your listener.
We used to, living next door, the TV cameras would come from Calgary, from CFRN, and once a week almost. And we loved to eavesdrop through the bushes at the stories that he was telling us. They were always well worthwhile listening to him, and there was no duplication. He could, without prompting or even being organized, he'd tell another story, and they just flowed.
Sometimes it was something, if it was a really nice day and they wanted to get a little outdoor, they strolled in our back garden, and so they got some, shall I say, unofficial applause for things like growing tomatoes.
You've had a huge garden.
That's right. Their family and our family were next door neighbors, and their family eventually put a wonderful little bungalow at the end and didn't have a big garden. They had Grandpa.
True.
And our side had another garden. And for example, for a change, we had corn. Corn. Oh, weeks and weeks of corn, and then gone.
It's got to be in season.
That's right.
And that season is right now.
That's right. My dad really, really adored David Thompson. He figured the lonely boy in Britain had to be promoted. That he was a really smart kid, and Canadians and others ought to know more about David Thompson.
And he received an award for his first book on David Thompson.
The book is called The Map Maker, because that's what David was. Now, the other one, called The Great Chief, was about Meskapatoon. He was the peace chief of the creeds. He was a very respected chief of creed. I don't know what sub creed.
What tribe or
That's yeah. Anyway,
is that where the story that about Red Deer being the valley of contentment between two hills of conceit? That's one of the stories told about Red Deer in relation to Calgary and Edmonton.
Yeah.
I often wonder where the origin of it is.
That's right.
One could choose that story as one.
That's right. Yeah. Well, in the days when hardly anybody would know the name Mascabatoon, at least my dad pointed to a very kind of a hero, because Mascabatoon was a chief who did not take up war, he took up peace.
And that's why that's, I guess the end result of that story is that there's a large park named after him in Red Deer.
Yeah, I'm going to read on here. His radio broadcasts were heard on the CBC, but also on other North American channels. And when he got a TV show, Outdoors with Kerry Wood, it was rented, I don't know. It was also bought on lots of channels. And see, this gentleman, my dad, never swore, hated swearing, but he never scolded people about that. He said it was their problem. And Outdoors with Kerry Wood more or less summarized his opinion. Just go into nature, and then you can cheer.
He certainly left his mark on Red Deer.
Well, let's just look at the list here. He published 28 books and little pamphlets, 6,200 short stories in all kinds of places, 8,000 articles. That's, the nonfiction, the
all on wildlife,
and what people could do to have their own little bird box. 4,000 radio talks.
We entered a bird box in one of his competitions, but he didn't quite like it.
Oh.
It wasn't a standard bird box.
Oh.
So we didn't win the prize.
Oh. 9,000 weekly newspaper columns. Those little columns. And all this business with what we're talking about is we're talking about the 60s, I think.
And 50s and back into the 40s.
Yeah, but what I wanted to make a point about was newspaper columns, 9,000. Radio talks, 4,000. TV scripts for other people. Oh dear. There were 2 Western Canadian radio broadcasters, and they each at different times within a couple of years a span begged my dad to give them some nature comments. So he found out what they wanted, and because also, having the business of radio work himself, he was able to give them some material to put on their programs and not have to redo it.
Like their ghost writer.
Yeah. 4,000 radio talks, 310 TV scripts for other performers, and 302 TV programs with his own speaking and his own plan. My mom and dad would hop into Austin and drive to Edmonton and be videotaped to entertain. I've lost my place.
I had the luxury of nominating him for the annual award from the Historical Society of Alberta. I think it was in 1968. And I know that he also received an honorary degree from
Yeah, we'll get to that.
U of A.
Yeah, we'll get to that. His publications were like 46 American and 18 Canadian school textbooks.
Record him. Yeah.
Or published him in 46 books usually his writing could be appreciated by what you would say was about grade 5 up.
Right.
And everybody wants nature topics because it was unusual. So, 50 anthologies that had nature topics. And, what would he get? He'd get $40. That's what it would, they'd mail it back for the call.
It's not a profitable profession.
No. Not a profitable profession, but he never, ever was in it for the money. Anyway, in 1990, he was given the Order of Canada by then Governor General Ray Nittichen. Ray came down to Red Deer, and they had, I believe in this building, a presentation from the province to my dad. He was in his 80s. So he never told us that he was having heart trouble, and he tried his best to keep up with his garden, but eventually he had to spend, in 1997, a few days in Red Deer Hospital, and his heart was getting a little erratic. Anyway, they decided he could go home. So it was his pleasure. They got, they'd already rented
a trailer?
Wheelchair.
Oh, sorry.
Wheelchair. And so he was able to be carried around his own garden when, after his Red Deer Hospital thing, and they said he could go home and have some fun. It was his pleasure because it was the summer. So he came back to the woodlot. The woodlot was their home acreage.
Out near 9 Mile Bend.
11 miles east of Red Deer. Yeah, very close to the hill that goes down to the bridge across the Red Deer River. They called it the Wood Lot. Anyway, he was allowed to go home, and he died in his own bed July 25th, 1998. I guess we have some summary. Mother and I were with him in that passing, and it was very peaceful. Heather and her sons arrived from California the next day, and we all went to the cemetery a few days later. The passing of Kerry Wood was in the papers and the radio and the TV. He wouldn't have liked the fuss, but he deserved a bit of a fuss. And of course, we were distressed because we had not been told how ill he had been. So tributes poured in. He was missed, but indeed everybody was and is grateful for his life, his accomplishments, and his legacies. Thank you very much.
He certainly, just to conclude, left his mark on Red Deer. I remember my father talking about the mark he really wanted, which was the preservation and the wildlife opportunity it presented with the sanctuary at the bottom of 55th Street.
We didn't mention that. We should.
He also, I guess it would be a few years later, was the nidus, or was the reason for creating the Kerry Wood Nature Center, which has allowed school children and so many of our community to love and enjoy Mother Nature much as he did. So I thought that was just a marvelous and appropriate tribute to him. Unfortunately, it was his family that got to enjoy it perhaps more than he did because of when it was built. But it's a marvelous tribute to him.
Yeah, he had tributes all along the last decade or so. I think my mother and he were both sometimes overwhelmed by the kind letters and visits, people showing up, somebody saying, would you mind autographing this book? And it would be The Great Chief, or it would be one of the 26 other books. Yeah. And because he was self-educated, really, people who were other naturalists or who were specialists in one aspect of wildlife studies and so on, they said, although he aimed his material toward fairly young adults and the rest of the adult population, but teenagers sometimes took on the idea of Mickey the Beaver and let's have a planned building of a Mickey house. What do we call it? I can't remember the word for it.
A dam?
The dam.
Beaver Dam?
The Beaver Dam, yeah. And there were good timing. Doris Forbes and her wonderful creature were, he thought Doris was carrying on the tradition of being a lay person who was interested in nature. I just saw somebody bend over backwards.
Not part of the script.
That's right.
No, maybe that's a good place to end it then,
It is.
Rondo.
It is.
And we can choose our clipping at the end. Well done, Rondo. Very well done. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Here's, I've got something for you. You have to read this aloud.
Oh.
Keep it running.
It's too long. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, try.
The title is Just Jokes. The source of it is Rondo Wood, who says I must read it, so I will. If lawyers are disbarred and clergymen defrocked, doesn't it follow that electricians can be delighted? I guess they can. Musicians denoted, cowboys deranged, models deposed, and dry cleaners depressed. Laundry workers could decrease, eventually becoming depressed and depleted. Even more of the bedmakers will be debunked. Baseball players will be debased. Landscapers will be deflowered. Bulldozers operators will be degraded. Organ donors will be delivered. Software engineers will be detested. And the BVD company will be debriefed. And even musical composers will eventually decompose. Tough plight. On a more positive note, though, perhaps we can hope politicians will be devoted. Good luck, especially given the past week and this terrible episode out of the United States. They could do well by reading this and believing the last line.
You want to each make a copy of that?
No, that's fine.
Tuck it in.
Anyway, well done, Rondo. Thank you ever so much.
It's fun, even if it's a little hippity hop.